Hello and welcome to this video, and today I want to talk about the incredible virtuoso drummer. I use that term, which is very interesting, as I've just done a video on virtuosity that will be coming out soon. And I think this video will act as a bit of a companion to that video, to discuss what makes this drummer so great. And it is this guy here, Vinnie Colaiuta, and this album, which I've called his lone masterpiece. Right? If you're a fusion fan, I think you need to check this album out. Absolutely incredible album. That's my album suggestion for you. If you haven't heard this and you're into jazz fusion, go and check it out. Right? Vinny does stuff on here that very few people have ever done. Right? It's some really interesting things. But before we get to this album, let's talk a little bit about Vinnie Colaiuta. I was watching some videos of him yesterday, and he is an incredible virtuoso drummer. But for me, he's separate from many other virtuoso drummers. It isn't just a display of skill. There's something in Vinnie's playing. It's odd and it's strange. It comes from, to me, quite a twisted place. He's trying to express something on the drums that isn't straight down the line, I'm so clever, I can do these incredible rolls around the kit and I'm so fast. It's not like that. He's trying to express something completely different, which is quite oddball and weird, right? Vinnie, for me, right, is the embodiment of the drumming that came out of the fusion era. So there's three drummers I think that the fusion world created three approaches that I can see in three types of drummers. The first would be Tony Williams, and Tony Williams is that completely new oddball way of approaching time and the way you play the drums, and the way he played the drums from the top down rather than sort of around the kit, the way he used polyrhythms, the way he played grooves, rock grooves and jazz grooves, the way he integrated swing into rock beats. That's Tony Williams. Then you have Billy Cobham, and Billy Cobham's got this incredible rudimental insane speed around the kit, insane rolls, like in a machine gun approach, but also an approach to playing odd times where he divides odd times in a much more Indian additive way, right? So rather than dividing odd times up into crotchets, you're actually adding little groups of threes and twos, and that's what Cobham did. That's his great thing. And then you have the studio perfection and groove and beautiful sound and taste of Steve Gadd, where Steve Gadd could go into almost any situation and be so incredibly creative, but within the confines of a pop song or a fusion tune, because what he does is so articulated so well, and his drum sound is so perfect, and everything is just so perfect and groovy and funky, right? Those explanations of all three drummers do him a disservice, right? But I think there's those three approaches. So out of the end of the 70s emerges a drummer, Vinnie Colaiuta, and Vinnie has all of those. He's got the odd time polyrhythm approach, the top-down way of playing from Tony Williams. He's got the brutal speed and the approach to time signatures at Billy Cobham. And then he's got the studio perfection in one of the greatest sight readers of all time, one of the greatest interpreters of pop songs of Steve Gadd. He can do all that. He's the master drummer. And he emerges in the late 70s, really, for me, in the Zappa band. Of course, I never discovered him in the Zappa band, all right? But for the world, he sort of emerges. I think he was playing with Brandon Fields before that, and he was probably known in Los Angeles. But to the world, it was his playing on Shut Up and Play Your Guitar and Joe's Garage that sort of just absolutely blew everybody away. There's Joe's Garage behind me. Okay, now I didn't come at Vinnie like that. Vinnie was not that well known. In the 80s when I was coming up, I'd never heard of him. I picked up Rhythm magazine one day, and there was a letter, and this guy said, has anyone heard of Vinnie Colaiuta? He's perhaps the greatest drummer in the world. He's currently playing in the Joan Rivers house band, which is what he was. He's playing in the Joan Rivers house band on TV, but it mentioned the fact that he'd played on a number of albums in the late 70s, early 80s, and that would have the Joni Mitchell albums, a couple of Tom Scott albums. He played on Nightwalker by Gino Vanelli, but the albums that he'd really done something innovative and new and unlike anybody else was the albums Joe's Garage and Shut Up and Play Guitar. Now, I was a Zappa fan, but I didn't have those albums, and I went and bought those albums. And Vinnie's drumming on Keep It Greasy, I can remember standing in the room and hearing it, and I'd never heard a drummer play like that. I'd heard drummers play odd time signatures. I'd heard people playing 19 time before, but I never heard anyone play time like Vinnie. The thing that struck me about Vinnie was when I was listening to him, up until that point, when I'd listen to drummers, I knew what they were doing, but I couldn't do it. With Vinnie, I just didn't know what he was doing, right? And it fascinated me. So I saved up and bought, and it cost quite a bit of money, the DCI video Zildjian Day in New York. And I eagerly, for the first time, got to see what Vinnie looked like, or what he looked like when he was playing. And what struck me again was at certain points, what his hands looked like they were doing didn't seem to have anything to do with what was coming out of the drums. That was the aesthetic I got from Vinnie, right? He was coming at everything in such an odd way, right? That I just couldn't quite tell what was going on, right? Up until then, I'd wanted to play roles like Neil Peart, where everyone knew what you were doing, but they were perfect, and you would roll around. I wanted to play fast around the kit like Billy Cobham, or I wanted to break up time in a way that there was a groove. I didn't want to upset the apple cart. But when I heard Vinnie, I completely changed. I wanted to play stuff that no one else would even understand what I was doing, and I knew the way to do that was to go my own way, right? The drummers like Cobham and Steve Gadd, when I was young, I actually sat down and worked out what they were doing. Now I do know some of the things that Vinnie does, and in most cases they're too technically hard for me to do. He's a real technically advanced drummer, but that's not what I got from him. I got from him an approach to music where you go your own route. You find the incredible things that you can do and push those to an extreme, so that when drummers come up against them, you've created your own world, which they don't understand because they're not even in that world to get it. And that was something I really tried to do on the drums, which came from Vinnie. All right. Vinnie then suddenly got the gig with Sting, and he goes from a really obscure drummer that no one's heard of to a sort of household name. And what he does on Sting's albums, 10 Summoner Songs, is playing a really quite tight, confined world, and he just throws a few Vinnie-isms in here and there, on the track 7 Days. He just puts it through. This just blows the whole drum world away. They can't believe what's going on. Anyone who's heard him on Shut Up and Play Your Guitar and sat there with Steve Vai's books trying to read the 17 over 14 polyrhythms that he's playing knows what this guy is doing and how bizarre it is. So around about this time he's playing with Sting, he decides to make a solo album, and he makes this solo album here called Vinnie Colaiuta. I think it's the only album he's made under his own name. He's made this and nothing else. I think this was made in 94, that's right. And what he does on this album, the drumming's incredible. Yeah, the drumming's incredible. But it's not the drumming that makes this album so interesting. On every single track, he seems to take an idea on and push it till its logical ends. In some cases, it's just pure complexity, which, like a track like Bruce Lee, just mathematical, dense, impossible to play music. He does that on that track, but on the first track, I'm Tweaked. He deals with heavy metal. He deals with heavy metal riffing, which is something that doesn't happen so often in fusion. But it's a rock track. But it's a rock track that displaces. He deals with displacement, and displacement is where you take the time and just shift it one way and then shift it another, right? What he does with displacement, no one had ever done before. When you hear that, it was just like so incredible. And then he does the drum solo from God's drum solo at the end of it, As it goes on, you can see he delves into ideas that the Mahavishnu Orchestra does. He delves into ideas from electronica. He delves into ideas from sort of straight 70s fusion. He delves into ideas from like dub reggae. He delves into ideas from just pure noise. He experiments with the studio. He experiments with the drum sound. He experiments with what we would perceive as a drummer's album. When you go back to these drummers' albums like by Lenny White and Billy Cobham, he messes with that. The players on it are quite incredible. And I won't be able to do this by memory, so I'm going to have to pull out, the basic band is here. It's got Michael Landau on guitar, Neil Stubenhouse on bass. We've got people that are like involved in the programming and creating sampled sounds. There's a lot of uses of loops. You got Dave Sanchez, who was playing with Sting's band, incredible fusion player on here. Steve Taglione on tenor saxophone. Sting appears on bass. Miller on guitar. So he's using a lot of guys out of the Sting band to augment this. He's really interested in him, those in that context. He's got Jeff Beal on trumpet, Tim Lanz on bass, Chick Corea does a guest appearance on a tune called Darlene Song, which is just, it really goes back to those albums by Chick, like Friends and Three Quartets. You can see Vinnie was a big fan of those, probably, with Gad on there, all the drummers are, and he does his thing. That's followed up by a dub track called Mamoska, right, which has Herbie Hancock on, right? And like I said, it finishes off with Bruce Lee, which is like a really complex, like one of the most complex fusion tracks, almost like in Zappa territory. And then the final track is called If One Was One, which really explores the idea of the one, which of course in music is the beginning of the bar. And he does everything with that and confuses the hell out of you. And again, it starts as the album ends as it starts with this sort of heavy metal influence. There's a strong heavy metal influence on this album that's interesting. Wide variety of influences. He's not pandering to commerce. He's not trying to make a pop album. He's basically exploring the stuff that he's really interested in from Vinnie's oddball view musically of the world, which I'm sure he has. Right? Why he didn't follow it up, I don't know. I think maybe it was just such an effort, with the funds that he had to try and make an album like that. But maybe it was that, and the rewards were not as great as just turning up and playing on a film soundtrack or playing for Sting. I don't know, but for me, Vinnie embodies what a true musician should be. Okay, and this is where this video acts as a companion to another video I just filmed about virtuosity. Vinnie for me is a truly great drummer. He possesses a high level of skillful virtuosity, and there are a million videos on YouTube now where someone's just cut out his drum fills and you can sit there and appreciate the motor skill dexterity of what he can do on the drums. But if you think that's what it's about and think that's what he's about, you get it completely wrong. Vinnie, to me, there's something quite tormented in the way he plays, and there's something odd and weird. He's trying to channel something else. He's often trying to escape rhythmically the confines of the rhythmical structure. He's one of the greatest drummers at this there's ever been. His understanding of tuplets and polyrhythms is incredible. I read an interview with him where he said that he really studied these at music college, but when he got into Zappa's band, he was in the unique position of being able to, on a big stage, experiment with these in an improvisational sense. All right? There's a logic to the way Vinnie plays, but there's also an illogicalness to the way he plays and the way he plays time. And he's trying to expand the confines of time, but with a very accurately phrased approach. And I find that very, very interesting. He strikes like a viper when he plays. I think that's so important to the way he plays. It's very exciting because of the way he strikes. He understands how to take the sound out of the drum rather than putting the sound into the drum. And this is something that even if you're not aware of that, you will pick up subconsciously. It's the difference between going plap, and it's the difference between that and striking bam. And that strike where you are back away, where you pull the sound out of the drum. The great drummers all do this. They seem to sit in front of the drum kit as though it's a table with an opulent meal, with sweets and fruits and meats in front of them, and they take from the drum. Everything's coming back out of the drum, right? And Vinnie does this in a very odd way, a tumbling way that pushes at the extremes of the rhythmical structure, okay? And when you listen to it, you are lost, but you know that he's not lost. And he plays in such a logical way that him not being lost is quite profound. The belief that he knows where he is and nobody else is quite profound. I think it's an incredible thing. His reaction time is so fast. His ability to react to what another musician's doing in real time and come up with not just a copy of it, but an answer to it is absolutely incredible. He exhibits flow, right? And he exhibits flow, I think, because he has an ability to switch off the judgment that's going on in his head, right? How many virtuoso musicians can you say that to? The rest of them so often just seem like they're sat there looking around for somebody to tell them how great they are, right? All this thought has gone into this lick that they've been working on, and they've done it, and we're supposed to go, yeah, that's really great. You know, you jump through 17 hoops, are on fire, brilliant, very impressive. Vinnie is the opposite to that. What you're seeing is flow state. What you're seeing is a musician that has switched off that and is in a state of grace. I watched a video of AC/DC the other day, and Angus Young, I watched him and I thought, Angus Young is in a state of grace. He is totally involved with what he's doing. He's not looking at the neck of the guitar, and he's not looking at the audience. His whole body is moving and thriving, and he's running around the stage, and everything that is coming out of him is absolutely perfect at that moment. And it's the same thing for Vinnie Colaiuta, and I think that's what makes him great. So that's my tribute to Vinnie, one of my favourite drummers of all time. If you want to check out some albums of Vinnie, I would go for Shut Up and Play Your Guitar by Frank Zappa, Joe's Garage by Frank Zappa, Alan Holdsworth's Secrets. Those would be the first 3 albums I would go for. And then probably to hear him in a commercial setting, probably 10 Summoners Song by Sting. Those would be the 4th albums. But you will get the whole picture if you just buy this Vinnie Colaiuta's solo album. Absolute fusion masterpiece. I'm going to hold it here, hopefully, so YouTube then will pick this up and I can use it as the little picture for it, or you'll be getting a black and white picture of Vinnie. Because that's why you get the pictures, is sometimes YouTube doesn't manage to pick up that I'm doing this. But that's a little one of my trade secrets there. But yeah, I love this guy, one of my favourite drummers, an inspiration, one of the great musicians of all time. He's got a podcast called Breakfast with Vinnie, and it's a fantastic podcast, and you realise what a thoughtful and interesting guy he is as well. If you like this, please like the video. Please put in some. Vinnie's done millions of albums, so if there's other brilliant albums out there with Vinnie on, put them in the comments. And also, more importantly, if you've got an opinion about what I said, this is why I'm really here. You know, I'm really trying to put some interesting philosophical ideas into these videos that will help musicians see things in a slightly different way, perhaps, and will help them in their music making and maybe calm the demons down and realise what they're really trying to do. So if you feel that's the case, please put it in there. And obviously, if you're new, please subscribe. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.